booktube, this is Kelly. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Books I'm Not Reading, and I am joined today by my wonderful husband, Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse. For Christmas this year, I got Jason this book, A Whole Life in 12 Movies. It's actually 14 movies. Anyway, but we decided to watch these films and read this book together and share it with you. And so we hope that if you've seen the first film that we're going to talk about, which is 2001, A Space Odyssey, please feel free to chime in with your thoughts of what you thought about the film. I love hearing from you in the comment section. If you don't feel comfortable leaving a comment, as always, you can leave an emoji or give this video a thumbs up. Jason is distracted because our cat Blue is on the couch with us, but anyway, so there are definitely going to be spoilers, and per usual, when Jason's on my channel, sometimes he swears. So
just mild foul.
Mild.
Possibility of it.
There's a possibility of it. So if and like I said, we're gonna completely spoil the whole film because I don't really think we could talk about it without doing that. So just be prepared for that. We thought we'd start off with our history, our own personal experiences of the film. I thought I had seen bits and pieces of 2001 previously. I just remember growing up, walking in on my dad watching it, and him, basically telling me that Hal, the computer, is the villain, the bad guy. I thought I had seen more than when we watched it last night. I realized, nope, we have not seen. Well, I must have walked into the room, and then after my dad said that, turn around and left. so I had pretty limited experience of the film. But Jason.
So I saw it in college, and I thought I'd seen it maybe twice, but I think I'd only seen it once. I think this was my second viewing. But it had been 25 years, at least, since I'd seen it. And, watching it last night, the thing I was most struck by, I suppose, was, I think when I saw it in my 20s, I think I framed it as, and I understood it as, a work of science fiction. And then watching it last night, I at one point told Kelly, I was like, this is really a horror film. this is more a horror film than anything else.
It was pretty horrifying.
Yeah, so I don't know what that says about, I suppose, sort of who I was in my 20s versus who I am now. What my sensibilities were then, what they are now. But yeah, I found it super creepy last
2001, it came out in 1968. It was, of course, directed by Stanley Kubrick. There's a novelization of the film that I don't know if they wrote in conjunction with the screenplay or what, but with Arthur C. Clarke. It did win the Oscar for visual effects, and it was also nominated for Best Director, but did not win. So, Jason, as I feel like your impressions based on what you've said, we've tried really hard not to talk about the film, but at some point it just spills over a little bit. But anyway, so I think Jason probably has the more popular idea about the film than I do, so maybe you want to start off and share your impressions of the film, and then we'll talk about that in comparison to what Kathleen Norris and Gareth Higgins have to say in this book.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, I mean, I felt like it was more a horror film than anything else last night. I don't consider it a masterpiece. I feel like there are
But your rating is still really high.
Yeah, it's still really high. Yeah, it's an obviously great movie. But yeah, there were I had issues with it, right? So the birthday phone call between the astronaut when he's on the tanning bed or whatever, I don't know if it's tanning. It seems like a tanning bed.
Oh, you mean like when he's getting the transmission?
Yeah, and he's talking to his parents on whoever the guy was who played his dad. That was a terrible performance. And Kubrick was infamous for doing like a mazillion takes. So I can't even imagine how bad the guy was in the takes that didn't make it into the movie. But and he was only in it, for a couple minutes, but it was still, it was a bad performance, right? In a film of otherwise good performances. And then, the scene at the end, what the authors of the book will call the birth canal scene, right? The LSD trip scene, that it just goes on too long. It just goes on too long, and was it Gareth? What's his name?
Gareth Higgins.
Gareth Higgins. At one point in the book, he says, it goes on a long time because life is long.
Which I found that offensive. Like, I was really upset by that. Like, not everyone does have a long life.
Well, that's true.
And nobody should make a movie because, like, you don't make a movie long because life is long. Like, that was just a dumb thing for Gareth Higgins to write. Really, really absurd
in the book. But so Andrei Tarkovsky made a science fiction film called Solaris. And there's a scene in Solaris near the beginning of the film, and I think it's filmed through if I remember right, it's filmed through the windshield of a car, and it's just, I swear to God, it's like 12 minutes long, and it's literally an unbroken shot of just lights and signs and buildings just whizzing by, and I hate that scene in that film, and I think I hated that scene in that film because I hated what Kubrick did.
What they call this going through the Stargate.
Yeah, it's just, whatever. I don't know. It was 1968, right? It was free love, drugs.
Right. I'm sure a lot of people watched 2001 who were high on something.
Yeah, and I've never done LSD. I have no plans to do LSD.
I'm glad to hear that. Your wife is glad to hear that.
But I don't know. I don't know how long that sequence lasted, but it felt like a very, very long time. So so there are issues that I had with it, but on the whole, I thought the opening of the film is brilliant. What the film is trying to do, and all the various things, it has to say about, evolution and man's relationship to technology, and I think it's all very interesting stuff. I was thinking today actually, about the scene where like, so the ape has discovered the bone. It's like, well, I can hit stuff with this. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is fun. And then they use the bone as an instrument to suppress, right? I mean, like to hurt. Yeah, to hurt, to gain an advantage over, and it occurred to me later, thinking about it, when Hal, sends that astronaut on his merry way, flings him out. Hal uses the spacecraft like they use the bone. Like Hal uses it as a tool, which is interesting, right? Because the bone cuts to the spacecraft later, or the satellite, whichever it is.
Yeah.
And so we've already been sort of conditioned to think of the bone as kind of correlative to spacecraft.
I don't know. I feel like we saw like an interview with someone recently talking about 2001, where they were talking about how the shape of the spaceships was similar to the shape of the bones.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's probably been discussed quite a bit, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, it's a fascinating film. It's incredibly suspenseful. The design of it, I was telling Kelly last night, the sound design, it's just got to be the best sound design I've ever encountered in a movie. I can't believe it wasn't nominated for the Oscar for that. That's insane.
I really liked the. I felt like Kubrick understood when to use music and what music to you, like being very choosy about it, and also when to just be silent.
Yeah, and not just silence, but like a void of sound, like a vacuum.
Right. But I felt like that was a strength of the movie, but I had a lot of problems with the film.
Yeah. Well, what were a couple of those problems?
Right. So okay. And those of you out there who love 2001, like I hope my opinion of this, like, don't leave, okay? Like it's all right. We can agree to disagree, and you can definitely tell me how much you love this movie in the comment section. But I was so frustrated with certain parts of this film, and I felt like the actual story itself, when it's a plot and it's moving forward, it's fine. But there was so much, like even the beginning. And of course, we have to have like an overture with. I thought something was wrong with our TV. There's music, but there's no image. There's nothing. It's just a black screen, you know. And then when we would go to the thing with the apes, like all the like landscape pictures or images, like that went on too long. I felt like. And at certain points, I really felt like the film was, and I've tried to think of a better word to describe it, but it was pretentious. Like, it was like Cooper going, oh, look what I can do. Like, we're going to have, it's the Dark Crystal. Like, we're going to have all the planets align. And suddenly the stone is going to be free and it's going to be flying around in space, which is like, it was just so absurd, like when all those planets like lined up, and then there's the stone. I hated that flipping stone so much. Like it was so and then the end, like when it's just ridiculous. Like, so he goes through the what Kathleen, Norris, and Gareth Higgins are calling the Stargate, which again took way too long. But then we have this weird scene where it's like, I don't know, 1968 version of like a schwanky room, except it's got white cubes on the floor that light up, and you know, and some old man is eating and drinking, and then he drops his glass, and then
he's an older version of that actor.
I know, I did get that. And then he's on his deathbed, and all of a sudden the guy who had been sitting at the table eating, and he had been wearing like this black robe, like he suddenly turns into like the stone. It was just, I mean, the idea that Kathleen Norris and Gareth Higgins present is that they chose this movie to talk about birth, to talk about the beginnings of our lives, you know, like going through the birth canal or whatever. I thought some of the shots were absolutely beautiful, and I was amazed that they were made in 1968, you know, or before that. I really appreciated, you know, I mean, just all these shots of like people, and they're walking like upside down, and you know, like they're not actually walking upside down, right? Like, but the camera is moving, and so it's almost like you feel the presence of the director in some way in those moments. But there are a lot of great shots in it, but it the whole thing needed to be tighter, and I don't know what to say about the ending, but I thought that the movie, because like I said, all I knew before I watched it was that Hal was like the bad guy. I thought this was going to be a movie about AI.
It is.
Right.
Hal is
but
the
like,
AI, yeah.
But that's not, well, that's not what they're talking about in this book, which this book has some, I hope this book gets better. some very poorly written sentences and bad ideas in it. Kathleen Norris and Gareth Higgins in this are talking about 2001, and particularly the end, and the astronaut that's at the end his name is David Bowman, But they're talking about it's like he's waiting to be reborn, and I just found that like, well, and again, I understand. I guess Stanley Kubrick never really talked about interpretations of his films, but
David Lynch in that way.
yeah.
No, he was.
But yeah, like I don't think a movie that is, you know, that someone's arguing is about pregnancy. There's hardly any women. You know, they're on screen for momentary shots.
One of the things that bothered me about what they have to say in this book, especially Gareth Higgins, is it seems almost like they're of the opinion that that the astronaut there at the end, that he sort of signs up for this, you know, that it's not necessarily his idea, but he sort of willingly goes along with being the.
And isn't he like
being,
so he becomes like the embryo, right? Like
yeah,
the unborn
yeah,
child
like so
at the end. It's like next to planet Earth.
The next stage of evolution, et cetera, et cetera. But just the way they write about it, so Gareth Higgins says he is childlike, grace-filled, and totally free, right? And then there's another part where he writes.
Seems to me like he's suffering quite a bit.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like during the LSD sequence, right? I mean, which Gareth Higgins seems to think that he's like, I don't know, filled with sort of awe and joy. He seems terrified. Like he seems like he's having a medical procedure done. There are these shots of his face in, I mean, expressions of horror and pain, and he doesn't seem like he's having a good time, like he's on one of those slingshot rides or something like this. I mean, he seems like this is a bad idea, and he should have, you know, become a periodontist or something instead of an astronaut.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk about. So you actually had it marked, right? So he says, but when the glass shatters on the floor in the room where Bowman is waiting to be reborn, it reminds us that sometimes a sharp break is necessary to initiate the next stage of who we are becoming. And I just don't like that interpretation of that moment. And I didn't realize what my interpretation was until I read theirs today. And what that scene tells me or suggests to me is that, so as human beings, I mean, we foolishly often like to think of ourselves as sort of the pinnacle of evolution. We're at the top of the food chain, right? Christianity and Judaism, I mean, they want us to believe that we're made in the image of God, et cetera, et cetera. And so we feel like there's nothing more, right? There's like this is it. This is the peak, and the breaking of the glass reminds me. So the glass it's something that has been designed, and it has been tested, and it has been manufactured, and there are many of them. Right now, if it had been made of Corelle or something, we wouldn't have had this issue. But the fact is, like, when it gets knocked over, it breaks. And I just thought it was a really powerful reminder that there are improvements to us that can be made.
But why
not just evolutionarily, but even in our own personal lives.
Why does it break then? So you're saying
because
we are broken?
Yeah, because we are not perfect. We're not perfect. Unless we're Corelle, right? Like, I mean, we're not perfect. Like, we're capable of breaking.
Indestructible.
We're capable of being shattered. And yeah, just as, with evolution, like, I mean, this iteration needs to eventually be replaced by something that is better, that is stronger. Where, like, the flaws have been exposed and addressed. And that's how I saw the breaking of the glass.
I just don't see how Gareth Higgins can possibly know what that means, like what that means.
It's an interpretation.
Well,
I don't like his interpretation.
Yeah, like it's just. Oh yeah, and then the other thing, again, back to the stone. and Aaron, if you're watching, I'm with you. I agree. Like, what is the stone about? Like, so that scene where it's a different astronaut, and I guess they go to the moon, where the stone has been buried for 4 million years. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, like, I don't know what I thought at the time. I mean, clearly you can see the astronauts reacting to the sound, but like that the stone is somehow emitting an alarm that humans have advanced far enough to get to where they are, and so now the stone is telling them, like, oh, go to Jupiter or whatever, that kind of
Well,
thing.
this
like,
is Kathleen Norris, though. This is her talking.
Okay, all right. Well, whoever's talking,
Yeah.
like, in the book.
But I'm saying that's not your interpretation. That's her interpretation. That the stone is emitting an alarm that the human beings have evolved to a point where now they can find the stone and
Right. You'll know if you've watched my channel long enough that sci-fi is something like it's just been slowly over time trying to become a little bit more familiar with that kind of thing, but I don't understand the purpose of the stone in the film. I thought I did when it's with the apes, but I don't know. The stone, to me, I thought it was like some kind of something evil, right? It
like a slab of Darth Vader or something.
I don't know. Well, okay, all right. So my actual first impression when the stone first shows up in the film, I was thinking like, oh, the stone is going to be the way that the apes learn to just walk on 2 feet. Because, and I know this sounds nuts. Okay, so like one of the things is babies who are born blind, since we're talking about birth here, babies that are born blind, they have no incentive to crawl or to walk, right? Because they can't see anything around them. And so my mom actually made these quilts to help these children learn to crawl. And so every block is like a very different kind of fabric. And so it creates a curiosity within the child to want to move farther along on the quilts to feel these different kinds of textures. So at first I thought, oh, like the stone's gonna be like, they're eventually gonna realize they can stand up next to the stone or something like that. But then like the apes suddenly turn murderous. They become carnivores. And then they're using it to take over the watering hole with the bones and stuff. And so I'm like, oh, okay, like the stone must be evil or like some kind of darkness or something, right? And then the next thing I find out that it's been buried on the moon for 4 million years, and it like emits this like piercing noise. And then the next thing, it's just floating in the sky with all these planets up. What is the stone about?
I feel like the stone is a catalyst for change. It's the thing that makes them curious for the first time, right? It's something new that has appeared in the landscape that they have gotten that they're so accustomed to. They're not curious about anything.
It's like
in their landscape anymore.
They're
They're just used to it. Now all of a sudden they wake up and they're like, wow, there's this monolith. What is this? And
they don't know it's a monolith, but like, right?
Regardless, they don't have language either. First thing in their environment that makes them curious. It initiates curiosity. And so after that, when the ape was like, oh, the bone, right? I mean, he starts wondering about the bone as like something other than a bone,
right?
And so that's essentially what it is. And at the end, like, it appears at the foot of the bed because, I mean, that's the human being who is going to become, right? Not literally going to become, but who is figuratively going to become the next iteration of humankind. And so it's imperative that the stone is there, because the stone makes anyone who sees it or anything that sees it curious about what it might be, right? And so it's just a reminder that we don't know everything.
Well, then what about Hal?
What about Hal?
Is Hal did Hal go to Jupiter?
Hal's unplugged, man. Hal.
I know. When
Hal
he killed all those other scientists that were like.
Yeah. Oh, and I thought one of the things. No, I loved that scene because they're cryo chambers, and this is part of the brilliance of Kubrick in this film is that he takes images. So, for instance, right, like when the astronaut's doing the spacewalk, and the little, I don't know, like the little ship that he used to sort of take him out there, and Hal takes control of it when it starts turning, it feels menacing. It's like, oh my God, like what is going on? And then the little arms come up, and it just feels menacing. And the shots of the cryo chambers, I did not think of them as anything but cryo chambers, and the dudes in them were just sleeping away. But in the scene where he kills them, Kubrick doesn't necessarily shoot them differently. Maybe the lighting is different or something. But my mind immediately, even before I realized what Hal was doing, my mind immediately thought they resembled sarcophagi, right? So it looked like
mummies.
Exactly, like they were chambers for mummies. And then all of a sudden, ding dong, right? Like, oh, everything's flatlining, lives are terminated, and How's bad news? Here's the thing. In 1968, the fact that there's a film that came out in 1968 warning us about the dangers of AI, that's crazy. I mean, that was back in the day when, like, a computer still filled a whole room, right? I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, like I said, that's what I thought the film was about. And so it was very confusing that Hal doesn't show up until... after intermission?
No, Hal's already there.
All right, anyway.
So just a general impression of the book so far is, and yeah, this is, Kelly was playing with the tripod.
I'm sorry about the tripod situation.
But the book itself it feels to me like it was dashed off. Like it doesn't feel like it was revised. It feels like they decided on what films they wanted to watch. And I like the idea of looking at films to represent different stages of a human life, right? It reminds me a little bit of Jonathan Bates' approach to Shakespeare with that Soul of the Age, right? Like, all the different stages from As You Like It, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
The soldier and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So the idea reminds me of that. But yeah, the chapters are, man, there's just no polish to it at all, and I'm really shocked by that. Because Kathleen Norris is a really well respected writer.
Well, I didn't feel like they dug very deep, I guess.
No,
it feels very shallow to me.
Well, and part of the
I'm
reason
not
why
hoping
is
the
that
book is going to get better.
They're so focused just on the birth thing, and they don't do a terribly good job. And I mean, we probably didn't do a terribly good job of this. But then again, we're not publishing a book.
We did not publish a book.
Yeah, and we're not, getting royalties from it. But, I don't think they do a terribly good job of tying the birth thing in with the other kind of elements of the film.
Right. I mean, there's only one paragraph by Kathleen Norris. I mean...
What are you talking about? No, there's like 4 pages by her.
No. One, would you let me finish?
All right.
There's only one paragraph about the stone in the whole chapter.
Yeah.
In her section. That's the only time the stone... Like, Gareth Higgins doesn't even mention the stone.
Well, Gareth Higgins, though, talks about... he mentions being in the presence of God, and I felt like Gareth Higgins was drawing a correlation between the stone and the divine, actually. That's what I felt like. But again, he doesn't go into it enough to make you certain that that's what he's trying to say.
Again, but the Tree of Life, I think, would have been a better choice for the birth chapter.
Is it in there?
It's in there for further viewing.
Yeah,
as is A Hidden Life, which is an incredible film. It's probably my favorite Terrence Malick film. And Yeah.
Yeah, so for further viewing at the back for chapter 1, Waiting to be Born, the films that they suggest, they actually don't put the Tree of Life in this chapter.
Oh, that's
They
interesting.
suggest Andrei Rublev, one of my favorite movies, Birth Story, Ina May Gaskin, and The Farm Midwives. Never even heard of that. Sounds like a documentary. Children of Men, what?
You gonna read them all off?
Yeah, there's 6.
All right.
Interstellar, The Road, and Solaris, right? The Tarkovsky film that I just bashed a
Yeah,
little
so
bit
a
ago.
whole, but that's pretty heavy on the science fiction, don't you think?
Yeah.
Question to
Kelly
ask.
Kelly gives me so if we're watching a film together, and particularly if it's in the last act of the film, and let's say there's something happening with the story that I know that she's not going to be enjoying, but I'm just she's watching it, I'm watching it. When it's over, when it was over last night, I looked over at her, and she has a particular look that she gives me when we finish watching something that, and it's often when there's a really ambiguous ending.
Yes.
And she knows I love ambiguous endings, but she hates them and she gets really angry at them. And then, when I watched Possession about a year and a half ago with Sam Neill and Isabella Johnny, she was downstairs for that whole thing. But that movie is basically 2 hours of screaming.
It was
And I,
horrible.
of course, watch movies loud. And when it was over, I'm on the couch and I could hear her start
you
walking up
can't
the stairs.
escape it.
I look over at her as she's ascending the stairs. And the look that she gave me, and then she, of course, says, "You owe me."
Well, Jason's always telling me that I don't share, like, he's always like, oh, I want to share this with you. I never say, oh, you know what, I want to share this chick flick with you.
But why not?
But you are a good sport about it. I give you major props for that. You are a good sport about it. But I'm okay with, like, oh, I'm going to watch a movie by myself. But Jason's just like, oh, I want to share this with you.
I like watching movies with other people. I don't mind watching them on my own, but I prefer to watch them with other people. And you're my other person.
I'm your other
right?
person.
Like, we live in the same house.
So in February, we're going to be watching, for the childhood section of the book, a film that came out in 2012. What Maisie Knew. I'm going to be watching that, and provided, anyone watches this video, then we'll make another video. If Jason wants to put that up on his channel, he can.
We'll just leave it on yours. Yeah.
But yeah, so if you'd like to join us in February for What Maisie Knew and a discussion of that film, and as well as childhood, so that should be interesting. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I look forward to engaging with you in the comment section down below. Booktube, remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll be back soon with another video.
Adios, y'all.
All right, bye.